News Talk 1070 KHMO presents On the Mark with Mark Hespin. News Talk 1070 KHMO presents On the Mark with Mark Hespin. On the Mark is powered by Cunis Country Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area at 221 North 36th Street, Quincy. Faith, family, and giving back. That's Cunis Country. And now, here's Mark Hespin.
Good morning, Tri-States, and wherever you may be listening on the News Talk 1070 KHMO app. This is On the Mark. I am Mark Hespin, brought to you by Cunis Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. And 1 week from today, right now, I will be broadcasting this show live for the first time ever on location. Well, we're live every weekend, but live for the first time on location from Cunis Honda Hyundai, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. It's going to be awesome. The atmosphere is going to be crazy. The guys are going to be out there selling cars. We're going to get some of the dealership dudes on the show with us, have special guests throughout. We're just going to be just an hour straight of Super Bowl talk, predictions, bets, gambling stuff, numbers, lines. Is going to be an awesome, awesome weekend. Can't wait for it. Next Saturday, put it on your calendars. Come out and see me on the Mark live from Cunis Honda Hyundai next Saturday heading into Super Bowl Sunday. We got a great show for you planned today, episode 222 of On the Mark. You can always reach out to me and follow me on all social media platforms, Twitter/X, Instagram, YouTube, at Mark Hespin, MarkHespen. And if you listen to the show on the app or you listen on the podcast or you're listening live, you can always follow the show. Just search On the Mark KHMO on Facebook. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about who's under the most pressure, the top 5 people under the most pressure for the Super Bowl. We will talk now that the coaching carousel is completely filled. Which fans are saying yay, which fans are saying eh, and which fans are saying nay. I think there is a couple in each category for sure. And then we'll wrap up the show with some really interesting developments as some of the other coaching hires and as the coaching carousel is filled. Which teams right now are absolutely going to be picking up the phone and calling the Chicago Bears to see what the price is for the number one pick to go get Caleb Williams? I'll rank them. But we'll start on the Mark with our Hespin headline number 1. Deja vu?
Hespin's headlines on the Mark.
4 years ago today, this week, it was February 2020. We're coming off of the 2019 season. There are some reports that there's this virus in China. It's making people really sick called coronavirus. And we're like, oh, well, that's in China. It's not going to bother us. We're going to be fine, right? Little did we know. But in the sports world, we were talking about this young, exciting, electric MVP quarterback and Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. They got through Brady and Belichick, the dynasty, and they are headed to the Super Bowl to take on a young, upstart Niners team led by young, exciting offensive coach Kyle Shanahan with a really stingy defense and the former Patriot backup turned starter Jimmy Garoppolo. And here we are 4 years later. And now we're talking about the wily veteran, 2-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs going up against maybe the best roster in football with some new faces, but the same core of the 49ers, the grizzled 49ers who have been to multiple straight three straight NFC title games and finally getting back to the big game to try to avenge their loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I want to spend a couple minutes talking about that game back in 2020, and then some of the biggest differences that we're going to see. I'll start by saying the thing that excites me the most about this matchup of Kansas City versus San Francisco is that even though San Francisco has a young quarterback in Brock Purdy, right? These are really experienced veteran teams. 4 years ago, This was new. It was fresh. It was exciting. Pat Mahomes was just this kid on a rocket ship. And since that moment, 4 years ago, the week before the Super Bowl, Mahomes is now a first ballot Hall of Famer. People argue he's a top 2 quarterback, maybe the best talented quarterback of all time. You can make that argument. That's in 4 short years, how much has changed for him. But we have now an experienced group on the Kansas City Chiefs side. They've won 2 Super Bowls. They've been to 3 in that since we saw them 4 years ago heading into this game against San Francisco. And on the other side, Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers team, they had young, exciting talent. We didn't know their peak potential in Bosa and Kittle, right? And Deebo Samuel. They were young players in that game. And a young head coach who was known for just choking it at the 28-3 loss with the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, but was putting together a heck of a defense and a heck of a unique run game with Mostert and all those young the committee of running backs. But now again, the Niners since then a Super Bowl and then 3 straight NFC title games this past 3 years. This is an experienced veteran team, an experienced veteran Chiefs team. So we don't have to worry about any of that heading into this Super Bowl matchup. In that game back in 2020, some of the biggest differences when the Chiefs won 31-20 is that they were led by their wide receivers, not Travis Kelce. Tyreek Hill, 9 catches, 105 yards. Sammy Watkins, 5 catches, 98 yards. They had a wide receiver group that you believed in, you trusted in, led by the most electric wide receiver maybe in NFL history in Tyreek Hill. Certainly the fastest. And then you look at that Chiefs team, you say to yourself, oh, well, that Chiefs team didn't have Isaiah Pacheco, right? This Chiefs team can run the ball with Isaiah Pacheco. No, that Chiefs team could run the ball. Remember playoff Damian Williams? 17 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown in that game. Yeah, Chiefs ran the ball well against the 49ers. It was young Patrick Mahomes that was the one that was detrimental to the Chiefs at times. 2 touchdown passes, but also 2 fumbles and 2 interceptions in that game against that veteran, nasty San Francisco 49ers defense. One of the biggest things that I look at that game, at that box score, and that Chiefs 31-20 win 4 years ago against the 49ers, is that they didn't have the defense, and yet that defense showed up. Held the Niners to 20 points, sacked Jimmy G, but were able to get pressure on him. They only sacked him once, but were able to get pressure on him. But this Chiefs defense looks very different. So I'd argue the biggest differences for the Chiefs of the 2020 win against the Niners versus the Chiefs of the 2024 team going into this game. Obviously, Travis Kelce has gone from a really good tight end, third best, second best in the league, to now a bona fide Hall of Famer. And you can make the argument the greatest tight end in NFL history. And he's now the focal point of the receiving game with a young receiver in Rashid Rice compared to Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins. I'd also argue that the Chiefs running the football will be a huge part of their identity. That's the same. Obviously, different face, different name as Isaiah Pacheco. But if you tell me Isaiah Pacheco could have 70 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown, I'd say that's great news for the Chiefs. If he could have playoff Damian's line, that's great news. I'd also argue the Chiefs' offensive line is better than it was then, especially with Tooney in the middle. I'd argue that Patrick Mahomes is obviously better than he was then. I don't expect 2 fumbles and 2 interceptions. So that's a huge advantage for the Chiefs. But the biggest difference, I would say, is this Chiefs team was able to hold that Niners team to 20 points with a shaky defense. Now, this is a good Kansas City defense led by Chris Jones, young Karl Loftus, who's really emerging. Really nice at the back end. Willie Gay should be hopefully back for the Super Bowl. Nice linebacker core. So that is all huge for the Chiefs. But on the flip side, the Niners were held to 20 points versus a bad, an okay Chiefs defense. Now it's a good Chiefs defense versus a great San Francisco 49ers offense. You look at this offense, it is completely revamped. The names that are similar for the Niners, when you look at the 2020 Niners that lost 31-20, yeah, Fred Warner, Greenlaw, Bosa, the defense, Armstead, that feels similar. That is all there. It's not as good of a defense as it was in 2020, I don't believe. It's close. It's not as good. But this offense is completely revamped. Brock Purdy, I would say right now, is a slight upgrade over Jimmy G, especially Brock Purdy being as mobile as he was, as we saw in the NFC title game. That is something Jimmy G never did, and clearly something that the Chiefs have to prepare for Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, the biggest upgrade, not a running back by committee for Kyle Shanahan anymore. No. He's got the best running back in football in Christian McCaffrey. I'd argue this offensive line is now better for the Niners when you add Trent Williams into the mix since that Super Bowl team in 2020. And a young Deebo Samuel with no Brandon Ayuk. Remember, Emmanuel Sanders was the number one go-to. But now you have a veteran, experienced Deebo Samuel, who behind Christian McCaffrey, his teammate, might just be the best weapon in football. With Brandon Ayuk, a surefire number one wide receiver, a big play wide receiver. And then you add in George Kittle, who was just a young pup in that game. Kittle had only 4 catches for 36 yards. Well, he's a difference maker now. Deebo Samuel did have 5 catches for 39 yards. They rushed the ball 3 times with him for 50 yards. So that, to me, is the biggest difference. Yes, the Chiefs' defense is better than that Chiefs' defense of 2020. But this Niners offense was an offense that was like, okay, if they can score 24 points, they should win because their defense is that good. Now it's, no. This Niners offense can score 30 easy. And their defense can certainly hold you to under 24 points. The veterans of Bosa, Warner, Greenlaw, and then you add in now Chase Young, Armstead. This is a force to be reckoned with on defense. So there's a lot that is similar. Yes, the coaches are similar. Yes, the star players, Deebo, Kittle, Bosa, Warner, Greenlaw, Kelsey, they're similar. Mahomes, obviously. But what's really different is the Chiefs got worse on offense slightly, especially in moments of like the wide receiving core. But Mahomes has gotten a lot better. So that equals out, right? And the Chiefs defense has gotten much better than that Chiefs defense of 2020. But man, that Niners offense is completely revamped and very, very dangerous. 2020 versus 2024. The score was 31-20 Chiefs back in 2020. Will it be something similar in 2024? I'll give my full prediction next week on the show live at Cunis Honda Hyundai for the first ever On the Mark live on location. I think that's the thing to remind yourself is even though Purdy is young, and he's very young. These are veteran teams. They've been through wars, and I think that's what we should be excited about as fans. Is that 4 years ago, these were young teams with huge expectations. And now these are veteran teams that even though the Niners haven't been back to a Super Bowl since, they've been to multiple NFC Championship games. Brock Purdy prepared for an NFC Championship game last year, played in one this year. Like these aren't young pups, either of them. And so we'll talk about who's under the most pressure coming up next. You're listening on the Mark News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app. Brought to you by Cunis Honda Hyundai. We'll see you live and local there next week for next week's edition of On the Mark.
This 1070 KHMO.
Welcome on back to On the Mark here on News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app. Brought to you by Cunis Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. They are the home of over 3,000 new and used vehicles to choose from. And stop by the dealership today, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. Just say, hey, Mark sent me over here. And then if you can come on out next Saturday, I'll be doing the show live, On the Mark live from Cunis Honda Hyundai in preparation for Super Bowl. Full breakdown, full predictions. We'll get some predictions from the guys out there, some special guests on the air with us. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. We'll take questions from you, the crowd. I'll get you on the air with me. We could talk football, talk the Super Bowl, and anything else you want to next week at Cunis on Honey. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's jump into it. Waste no more time. As always, you can follow me on all social media at Mark Hespen, MarkHespen, Twitter/X, Instagram, and YouTube. But let's get into it. Hespen headline number 2.
Hespen's headlines on the mark.
I feel like I need to start singing. Under pressure. Under pressure. Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, Andy Reid, the Chiefs, Super Bowl 58. Who's under the most pressure in Super Bowl 58? Well, I think there are 5. I could have gone more. I think there's a lot of players and a lot of coaches under pressure in Super Bowl 58. People like Steve Spagnuolo, he's got to deal with that offense of the Niners. There's a lot I could say. Obviously, John Lynch, I think, is under pressure with the Niners because, he's the one who, gave all those assets up to get Trey Lance and has kind of put all the eggs in the Brock Purdy basket. And so I think there's a lot of pressure. But I've narrowed it down to the top 5 people under the most pressure for the 2024 Super Bowl 58. So let's count it down. Who's under the most pressure? Starting at number 5, Travis Kelce. Travis comes in at number 5 because obviously he has now the weight of the world on him in a lot of different ways. A year ago, Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl, he can be brash. He can say whatever he wants. He can throw his helmet. He can be fiery. And football guys, we all love Travis Kelce. He's a very beloved figure in the just guys who like football world. But now he has the pressure of the world watching him to not only perform big because he is the most known player in this Super Bowl because of his girlfriend Taylor Swift. So he's got all of that, but he's also then got the pressure of you got to perform. And you not only have to perform, you got to put up big numbers, put up big stats, but you can't lose your cool. You can't be caught on camera saying something or doing something wrong or inappropriate because that could haunt him. That could ruin his career. That could ruin, his reputation to slip in a reference there. With the Swifties. So he's under a lot of pressure. I mean, Kelce would be on this list probably anyways just because he is the go-to guy for Patrick Mahomes. The offense runs through Travis Kelce now. As I said 4 years ago, that just wasn't the case. He got to benefit from Tyreek Hill taking the top off the defense and just eating up catches over the middle. He was the security blanket. Now he's the go-to guy. So he's got a lot of pressure. The offense has to work. It's not the best offense the Chiefs have had in their 4 Super Bowl appearances now, but he is the catalyst for it. And so everything's got to run through him. He's got pressure to perform. He's got pressure to put up numbers. He's got pressure to make plays in the biggest moments. And he's got the pressure of don't swear, don't slip up, don't throw your helmet, don't get it taunting, don't do something stupid, don't throw a punch because the Swifties and the world are watching. And that will be headline number 1 on the Today Show and Good Morning America and all the other things that lead off your Monday morning post Super Bowl. So Travis Kelce's he's number 5 on this list. Could be higher, but I think in the end, Kelce, I don't worry about him really screwing up to where he screws up with the Swifties. And I do think there are 4 more people with more pressure. And number 4 would be Andy Reid. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, Andy Reid, he's got the rings now. He's got all this. But I think the pressure of the retirement and what Andy will do in the post-career, he is the guy that now you look at in this Super Bowl and you say to yourself, is Andy done? Will he walk away? And that's a lot of pressure. Not a lot of guys have the storybook ending that their career ends with a Super Bowl title, walk off into the sunset, and you off to Canton. Tom Brady almost had it and then decided to come back. Michael Strahan got it. Peyton Manning rode off into the sunset, but he was really carried by a great Broncos defense, and he limped his way to a second Super Bowl title. So a lot of pressure for Andy. And also with Andy, he's now being asked, really, this is his toughest offensive coaching job because the weapons just aren't there on the outside for him. Rashid Rice is really developing into a nice young receiver, But ideally, I think the Chiefs, and they know this, Rashid Rice would be their number 2, ideally. And he will be their number 2 with Mahomes going forward. You know, he's got a body like an Ayuk, but he hasn't really developed yet into that number 1 go-to guy. In the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes offense, you'd like to still have that guy who's the number 1 guy who can really take the top off the defense. That's not really Rashid Rice in his game. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Andy to make the offense work, to find ways to be creative, and against a really, really good 49ers defense. He's got the pressure on him to figure it out. You know, we don't question Mahomes and his talent. And so if the game plan is bad and it comes out and they aren't able to run the ball and, you know, Mahomes gets shellacked by this Niners defense, a lot of that criticism would go to Andy Reid. It won't go to Patrick. You know, the only time that you could have said, all right, the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl, let's go criticize Reid, you really couldn't, because it was so obvious what happened in that loss to Tampa with their 2 starting tackles both being out. I mean, it was a hurricane of horrible circumstances. We write that one off. You know, Patrick Mahomes has lost the Super Bowl, and we don't blame him or Andy Reid or the Chiefs at all, because they literally just got bit by the injury bug at the worst possible time. And the strength of the Tampa Bay team was their defensive line and their ability to rush the passer. And so it was a perfect storm of a nightmare scenario. So Andy Reid's under pressure, because the microphone, if he's holding the Super Bowl trophy with a win, will be, what are you going to do, Andy? You're walking off? You're walking off at the sunset, or you're riding it back? It's a lot of pressure to handle. Big Red can take it, but he's under a lot of pressure. Don't get it mixed up. Number 3, Brock Purdy. Now, people may argue Brock Purdy's not under pressure. He's a young guy. You know, he's got a ton of weapons. Shanahan will take a lot of pressure off him. I agree. But you're lying to yourself if you don't say the starting quarterbacks both are in the top 3. We'll get to Patrick Mahomes here in a second. Brock Purdy is under a lot of pressure to perform. Brock Purdy could have the start of a career that is very, very much so eerily similar to Tom Brady. Right? The low draft pick, not the starter. No one expects anything from him. The starter goes down, and then all of a sudden, since the starter went down, he's been electric. And if Brock Purdy didn't get injured in the NFC Championship game last year, we could be talking about the 3 times in 4 years that this is the Chiefs, or 3 times in 5 years that this is the Chiefs versus the Niners in the Super Bowl. There's a lot of pressure on this kid. And if you're Brock Purdy, you know winning a Super Bowl this early in your career, look at what it did for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was talked about after that Super Bowl win as a borderline Hall of Famer for the next 8 years of his career, until it started going really, really south over the last 2 years. And so for Brock Purdy, I mean, it is game-changing. It's game-changing. And while, no, I don't think Brock Purdy is the most talented quarterback in this game. And while, no, I don't think Brock Purdy is probably even in the top 10 most talented football players in this game, Brock Purdy is the epitome of what you want in the NFL if you don't have Patrick Mahomes. If you don't have one of the top 5 guys who just on talent alone can get you to a championship game or a Super Bowl, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, if you don't have one of those, then the next thing you want is Brock Purdy. He is the leader. Him and Jared Goff, they are the leaders in the clubhouse for the next tier. Tier 1, extreme talent, nothing like we've ever seen. They can carry you. Tier 2, Jared Goff and Brock Purdy are the faces of Tier 2, which include a lot of guys like Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, and all those guys. Brock Purdy is a starting quarterback in the NFL. He will be for a long time. But a Super Bowl victory and playing well in a Super Bowl might elevate him to what Tom Brady was able to elevate to. Because Tom Brady was always in Tier 1, right? But he's not Mahomes athletic. He's not Josh Allen arm. Tom Brady's not Lamar Jackson freak athlete. So why was Tom in Tier number 1? Because he was so good at managing the game and running the offense. He did it better than anyone else. And Brock Purdy has an opportunity to be a tier 1 guy because of how good he is. He's elite at managing and running the game. Problem is Brock Purdy has been shaky. He was shaky against Green Bay. He was ugly against the Ravens. And he was shaky again in the first half against the Detroit Lions. This Chiefs defense is better than the Lions defense, better than the Green Bay defense. It's not as good as the Ravens, but it's certainly better than the Lions, and it's better than the Packers. And it's experienced. And Spags is aggressive. So he's under a lot of pressure to perform. Because if they lose and he throws a pick and it doesn't look great, we all know what we'll be saying Monday morning. The 49ers don't have a quarterback capable of winning a Super Bowl. A lot of pressure for a young Brock Purdy. Patrick Mahomes at number 2. He's not the number 1 most pressure guy. He's the number 2 because he's a Hall of Famer. His career is solidified. So a loss against an extremely talented Niners team, best roster in the NFL, when you don't have a go-to number 1 wide receiver, I don't think we'll blame Patrick too hard. But there is pressure because Patrick, with a Super Bowl win, will have the most impressive start to a career in NFL history guaranteed. Tom still has it right now by a hair. But if Mahomes wins a Super Bowl, this has officially become the most impressive start to a career in NFL history. Better than Jim Brown, better than Tom Brady, better than Walter Payton, better than anyone else. Jerry Rice, who's a top top 10 player in NFL history. Better than Peyton Manning. The best start to a career in NFL history. He has a chance to really solidify that. Because he'll have the same amount of rings in the same amount of time as Tom, but he'll have the MVPs and he'll have the stats that blow Tom away. Patrick Mahomes is more important to the Chiefs to the start of his career than Tom was to the Patriots at the start of that career. You can make the argument. And so there's a lot of pressure on Pat. There's always pressure on Pat. He's the face of the league, despite what Swifties might think. Patrick Mahomes is the real face of the NFL. So there's pressure. And if Pat plays poorly, throws a couple picks, that really dings his legacy as, battling for the title of greatest of all time. The only person that Patrick Mahomes is chasing right now is the GOAT. I mean, he's like LeBron James. The only person you're chasing is the GOAT in your sport. That's a lot of pressure. And then finally, Kyle Shanahan. The Niners have done Kyle no favors, and they themselves haven't done any favors to help Kyle in the sense that everything's on Kyle. It's system or bust. And the NFL is constantly stripping away coaches from him because everyone wants that Kyle Shanahan run system, that play action system. Because there's a lot more Brock Purdy's in the league than there are Patrick Mahomeses. And so you have a lot of NFL teams looking around going, we need to be able to run what he runs. Because our guy's a lot closer to Purdy than it is Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. So there's a lot of pressure on Kyle. Because we know what will happen Monday morning if the Niners lose. Especially if they lose after maybe giving up a lead or the offense sputters. I mean, man, he just can't get it done in the biggest and brightest spots. And, man, can you imagine if he just had the quarterback that could make the plays? What happened after the Niners lost that Super Bowl? And then Jimmy G, they ran it back and he got injured and they sputtered into 2020, 2021 season. They traded their whole draft at the end of in the spring of 2021 to trade up to go get Trey Lance. So this could be the start of that again. And also, this Niners defense is not getting any younger. This is the time. This is the moment. This is the time. It's got to get it done. You're listening on the Mark, News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app. When we come back, talking a little coaching carousel, live and local in America's News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app.
From the Salvation Army, welcome to Heartbeat.
One of my biggest pet peeves is seeing someone littering. When I see someone throwing trash out of a car window, it drives me crazy to see someone disrespecting the environment like that. God gave us this beautiful planet, and He wants us to be good stewards over it. We find ourselves asking God for things we desire, but if He can't trust us with taking care of what He's already given us, why should we expect more? God knows our needs, and it's His good pleasure to meet our needs, and even some of our wants, according to His will. But let's be gracious and thankful for what He's already given us by taking care of this beautiful garden called planet Earth.
For more episodes of Heartbeat, visit salvationarmyradio.org.
I'm Danny Schaefer, lifestyle content creator. My little brother had these piercing blue eyes, like the ocean. He was just 33 when we lost him to an accidental opioid overdose.
My name is Darren Waller. I had it made, living my dream playing professional football. Then my life hit rock bottom. I had an accidental opioid overdose.
I felt this shame, this stigma. Everyone knew, but no one talked about it.
I felt completely isolated. My family didn't even know. I refused to stand by and watch without doing everything I can to change the stigma.
If you know someone taking opioids, have a safety plan and talk about it.
It can happen to anyone you know or love. It happened to me.
I'm sharing Scott's story because reversing the silence can help save lives.
Let's help put a stop to opioid overdoses being a leading cause of accidental death in America.
Be prepared. Learn how at reversesilence.org.
It's so vitally important that we have the Leukemia Lymphoma Society on our side, be the front runner in technologies for fighting cancer.
To give or get help, visit LLS.org.
Here's your weatherology forecast from the News Talk 1070 KHMO Weather Center. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times today, with daytime highs approaching 52. Winds out of the east, 8 to 15 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies again tonight. Lows dip down to about 34. Right now, 36.
Welcome on back to On the Mark here on News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app. We are brought to you by Cunis Honda Hyundai, your number one Honda and Hyundai dealer in the tri-state area, 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. You got to ask about that lifetime powertrain warranty, the no fear warranty on new and used vehicles. And come on out next Saturday. I'll be doing the show live from Cunis Honda Hyundai. It's going to be a ton of fun. You guys, the listeners, can get in on it, ask questions, get on the radio, talk. It'll be an absolute blast. I can't wait for it. I wish it was like a 4-hour show, but we only have an hour. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So come on out next Saturday. Let's get into it. Keep the show moving here. I want to switch gears a little bit away from talking the Super Bowl. You know, we talked kind of the difference between the teams of 2020, 2024, and then who's under the most pressure. We'll do official picks and predictions next week on the show. The NFL coaching, head coaching cycle, hiring cycle is now complete. Commanders hired Dan Quinn. Seahawks hired Mike McDonald. And now we are all set. All 8 spots have been filled. I look at this and I say to myself, there are a couple to me that if I was a fan of the team, I'd be really bummed. There are a couple, if I was a fan of that team, I'd be like, well, we'll see how this goes. Like, good luck. All right, we'll see. And then if I was a fan of the team, I'd be pretty bummed. I'd be pretty frustrated. So let's start with what I would be excited about. I think there are 2. I think they're pretty obvious, and they happen to be in the same division. The Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. That is a home run. If I was a Chargers fan, I'd be cloud 9, walking on water, celebratory beers after work every day. I mean, it'd just be a huge party. He was the best head coach available. They lured him away, and he is a culture and tone setter. And every single one of these teams, they need to hire a new coach. You know, they were looking for a culture and tone setter. They got the best one, the Chargers. They needed it the most. And he will take pressure off of Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert, I think, is going to have a heck of a career with Jim Harbaugh. I can't wait to watch it. So that's a no-brainer. That's easy. There's one other that I think I'd be really excited for if I was a fan of the fan base, and that is the Raiders, Antonio Pierce. Because my team is the Raiders. If I was a fan of them, they went big game hunting with Gruden, and then they went big game hunting with Josh McDaniels. And I both of them ended up being disasters for their own reasons. Listen, if Gruden hadn't done the email thing and all that, would I think though the Raiders would be winning with Gruden? Probably not. Gruden was, kind of antiquated, leader of men. Come on, men. And, it wasn't exactly looking like it was turning around completely under Gruden anyways. And Mike Mayock, they were struggling. It wasn't like they were, it's not like the arrow was pointed really, really high. And then McDaniels obviously was a disaster, and he'll never be a head coach again in the league, and probably rightfully so. But if you're the Raiders, you knew you had to have a guy that you couldn't overpay for, and you saw a lot of things that you would like out of Antonio Pierce. There's questions about what the Raiders will do going forward with a lot of positions and everything, but at least I can look my fandom in the eye and say, hey, we got a guy who can come in and set a tone, set a culture. Look at what Dan Campbell did with the Lions. That's what you hope Antonio Pierce could do with the Raiders. Stabilize the organization, hover around 500 or better over the next couple of years. That would be a great success for a Raiders team that is looking up at a lot of elite coaching in their division. So I'd be excited if I was the Chargers and the Raiders. There are 4 teams that I think, in fairness, if I was a fan of the team, I'd go, okay, all right. I can convince myself to be excited, and then I can convince myself to be frustrated, and so I'm just going to be, all right, we'll see how it goes. We'll give them 2 or 3 years, right? The Titans with Brian Callahan. I wouldn't have gotten rid of Coach Vrabel. I think Vrabel is the elite NFL head coach. I think it's great that Vrabel's taking a year off because I think he will be the hot commodity. Just like Sean Payton took a year off and then was the hot commodity, that is Vrabel. He will have a lot of jobs to choose from next year, and he'll be the favorite for a lot of them. But if you're going to move off of Vrabel and you have a young quarterback, the Titans did it right. They went and got an offensive coach. They look around their division and they say, wait a minute. What's going on there with C.J. Stroud? What's going on there with the Shane Steichen and the Colts? What's going on there with Trevor Lawrence down in Jacksonville? We need to be offensive leaning. We need to fix our offense. And Brian Callahan is an offensive guy who's getting his chance with their young quarterback. He was the one who was there with Joe Burrow since the beginning. So obviously I think that's a positive hire. My is not the hire. My is the organization moved on from Mike Vrabel. Maybe the organization should have fired some other guys that aren't Mike Vrabel. You know what I mean? Patriots. Hard to move on from Bill Belichick. Big shoes to fill. And so my with this is, if you're going to move on from Bill Belichick, I would have hoped, if I was a Raiders fan, to go completely out of left field. I would, replacing the legend with someone from his tree, that's tough. That's tough. But I do like Mayo. If Mayo is hired as the head coach somewhere else, I'd be like, this is a real hire. This is feels like DeMeco Ryans. So I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm pretty with the Patriots, but they do have a high draft pick. So maybe that will, they're going to just try to, recreate the Texans model. So I'll be right now. Falcons, Raheem Morris. I love Raheem Morris. I think he's a great dude. I think he is deserving of a second chance to lead a franchise. Atlanta has a winnable division, so those are all good things. But man, oh man, oh man. Atlanta needs to figure out this offense. They have so much untapped potential on this offense. And you hire a defensive coach. That feels tough to me. That feels like, He's a deserving guy. If he can get the offense and the offensive coordinator figured out, well then, this could be a real success for Atlanta. Because he's going to set the culture. He's going to set the tone. And so we'll see where it goes from there. But it feels a little And then the Panthers, Dave Canales. I'm hearing some things about Dave Canales in his personal life in a book he wrote and some stuff that I don't love. Got to be honest. Don't love. You're going to look into it. I'm just going to tell you, look into it. Dave Canales, he wrote a book. Why did he write the book? He seems to me to have an air of like you create a coach in a lab of like, give me young, attractive, rah-rah, believes, really, really, really a believer. Really loves his Lord and Savior, which nothing wrong with that. But if I don't get the vibes that it's very authentic. I don't get a lot of authenticity from Dave Canales. I do like what he's produced on the field. I mean, he resurrected Baker Mayfield's career, things like that. and he got a 6-year deal. So those were positives. But I guess anyone who was going to take the Panthers job to me was going to be because the Panthers are just a nightmare. And then the two people left that I wouldn't be too excited about, and they're the last two hires. And I think there's a reason that they were the last hires is because, they're just not things I'd be too pumped about. Mike McDonald, I mean, listen, youngest head coach in the NFL, and he's a defensive guy going to Seattle. That's a tough division. You don't have a quarterback, and you're following the footsteps of a really beloved defensive guy. Yikes! Good luck. Good luck. I wouldn't be pumped. The only thing I could convince myself if I am a Seahawks fan is, again, they didn't go in the Pete Carroll tree. They went out of the tree, and he's a guy who performed really, really well with the Ravens this year. And he's young, so energetic. Maybe he could build a culture, but I wouldn't be pumped. And then, obviously, Washington, Dan Quinn. Not pumped at all. Washington, second pick of the draft, new owner, bring fresh blood, and this would be the perfect time to go out and get an offensive guy, pair him with your young quarterback, but instead you had old defensive coach in Ron Rivera, and now you're going with the old defensive coach in Quinn, who feels a lot like Ron Rivera, and he went to a Super Bowl, it didn't go well. He's been a head coach before, it never really went that well. Knows the division. I'm not sold. I'd be pretty disappointed if I was a Commanders fan waking up this morning. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with some teams that need a quarterback and who needs to be aggressive. Next, live and local, it's On the Mark and News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app.
From the Salvation Army, welcome to Heartbeat.
Think of the last really good action movie you saw. The car chases, the crazy parkour moves, the fight scenes. Chances are, the actors you know aren't actually doing these stunts themselves. Instead, movies rely on body doubles to make these crazy stunts happen safely. A body double is similar in height and appearance, wears the same clothes, and even learns to walk the same way as the actor they are imitating. Likewise, as Christians, we are to be the body double of Christ on earth. As we learn of his character in Scripture, we learn how to imitate his behavior to a world in desperate need of Christ-like love.
For more episodes of Heartbeat, visit salvationarmyradio.org.
My name is Juanita Segura, and I was diagnosed in November of 2014 with non-small cell lung cancer. The first time I heard about biomarker testing was actually my husband. He just started researching about lung cancer.
And I found out about biomarker testing, and I'm like, why not? Let's try it.
I'm Dr. Jorge Gomez, thoracic medical oncologist at the Mount Sinai Hospital. Comprehensive biomarker testing is looking for either substances in the blood or mutations in some of the genes of the cancer cells that can help us identify special types of lung cancer that can be treated with what we call targeted therapies.
Letting my children know brought all of us a sense of hope. To give them hope that mom is going to be around to see you grow up. And I promised them that.
Ask your doctor about how comprehensive biomarker testing before treatment may help you and your doctor decide on the best treatment for you. Visit noonemiss.org for more.
A public service message from Longevity Foundation.
1070 KHMO.
Welcome on back to On the Mark here on News Talk 1070 KHMO and the KHMO app. Brought to you by the great people over at Cunis Honda Hyundai. Once again, want to let everyone know, next Saturday, I will be live at Cunis Honda Hyundai from 9 to 10 doing the show On the Mark, on location, live from Cunis Honda Hyundai. Next Saturday, Super Bowl weekend. Come on out. Check us out. It's going to be a lot of fun, live broadcast. You'll get to interact with us if you're there. We'll get you on the air, get your hot takes about Super Bowl 58. It's going to be an awesome time. 221 North 36th Street in Quincy. Stop by and ask them about their lifetime powertrain warranty on new and used vehicles. Just tell them Mark sent you. All right, I want to wrap up the show here by quickly saying that now that the coaching cycles have kind of ended, right? We just talked about all the different coaching hires and my thoughts on all of them if I was a fan of those teams. You start to look around the league and you notice that a lot of the teams that just hired the coaching or just had to hire new offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators like that, teams with coaching turmoil, a lot of these are the same teams that have quarterback turmoil. I think there are 6 teams right now that will be the teams that we talk a ton about all the rest of February, all the rest of March, and the early part of April in discussing what they're going to be doing with the quarterback position. And what I would say most likely is these are the 6 teams that I could really see calling the Chicago Bears and saying, hey, what's the asking price for Caleb Williams and the number 1 pick? So let's start with it. The number 1 team I think I could see calling the Chicago Bears and saying, hey, what's the asking price for Caleb Williams? And that's the Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are ranked number 1 in this power ranking. They desperately need a quarterback. I've said it for months. The Raiders need Caleb Williams more than anyone. You have Patrick Mahomes in division with Andy Reid. You now have Harbaugh and Herbert. That is a dangerous combination. Sean Payton and Russell Wilson didn't work out, but Sean Payton's not going anywhere, and he's going to be trying to get his quarterback. I think the Raiders are the team that, to me, is the most likely to offer a big, kind of Hail Mary package to go get Caleb Williams. And they're the team that I think needs to do it the most. They are the number 1 in the need to go get Caleb Williams power ranking. Number 2 is the team in their division, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos, to me, and it's funny, the Raiders are at 13, the Broncos are at 12, both 8-9 last year. The Broncos need to reset. They have all the same problems that the Raiders do in division. And so if the Raiders go get their quarterback, the Broncos, you have Sean Payton, and you have an improving defense and some nice pieces on offense. But your quarterback list, you can't have the 4th best quarterback in the AFC West. You're dead in the water if you have the 4th best quarterback in the AFC West with Harbaugh, Herbert, Reid, and Mahomes. So they're at number 2. Number 3, Washington. Washington is a team that desperately needs a quarterback. Unlike the Bears that have a quarterback where you'd like to maybe upgrade, but they desperately need a quarterback. I can see Washington. It wouldn't take a ton to move from 2 to 1. Wouldn't take everything. So if they are sold on Caleb Williams, the homegrown kid from the Washington, D.C. area, they could certainly make the move. Number 4 would be the Patriots. Same thing. Going from 3 to 1, it's not going to take mortgaging everything in your future. It's doable if you fall in love with Caleb and you want to go get him to jump ahead. You're in the AFC. You think about all those quarterbacks you got to compete with in the AFC. You need to go get your guy. Team up your young defensive energy-setting coach with the offensive superstar quarterback like the Texans did. They really would copy the Texans' game plan perfectly if they went and got Caleb Williams. Number 5, Atlanta. Atlanta would have been higher on this list, but I think the Raheem Morris hire with those weapons, he's not an offensive guy. It makes me feel a little bit more like they're going to be content going through the free agency market for a quarterback. Now, I might be really wrong on this. They're still on the list. I still think Atlanta makes a ton of sense. You're at number 8. To go to number 1 wouldn't be everything. You offer the Bears one of your really good starting players, first number 8 overall, and next year's first. I think it could get it done if you really want to go get Caleb Williams. And then number 3 in this scenario, Washington Commanders. I said that, but number 6, the other team that just hired their coach, Seattle. Seattle, again, is going to be harder for them to get from 16 to 1. They'd have to mortgage a ton. But I think they are a team now. You look at their young defensive head coach. You really need to go get your quarterback, your franchise on the offensive side of the football. So there you go. Raiders, Broncos, Washington, Patriots, Atlanta, and Seattle, all going to be teams to keep an eye out for. Could be trading up. Maybe it's not to number 1, but maybe within that top 5 to go get their quarterback of the future. See you next week at Kunis Honda Hyundai. It's going to be a blast of a show. Can't wait for it. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, at Mark Hespin, on YouTube as well. And enjoy this weekend. Super Bowl 58 next weekend.